Good morning, all. I was rather incensed the other day to read in the Financial Times, and I'll quote here. It was an FT report on the connected business. And the article states that the CIO's job is, I quote, more about following procedures and keeping the company's IT systems running. And I actually responded to that. I mean, at the moment, the world is full of digital. It's digital this, digital that. And I think there's no doubt that the advent of the mobile, broadband, cloud, etc., is changing things for us. So, got together a very eminent panel, and I hope we'll soon be joined by another. And I'll ask them to introduce themselves, because they're very senior and very experienced in their own ways. So first of all, Jean-François, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Thank you, Bill. Pleasure to be here. I'm Jean-François Letino. I'm based in Paris. I'm the CIO and COO for AXA IM Real Assets. So you may know AXA as the insurer. AXA also has an asset management arm to which I belong, and as part of this, the companies I work for are dedicated to real estate and infrastructure. Very much involved in everything. Oh, does that work better? Sure it does. So you heard the name, I hope. Otherwise, just ignore it. Just very much involved in everything digital, as everybody is, and I'm very keen to interact with you today about what that means. Is it only efficiency? Is it something completely disruptive, as we've read so much everywhere? And I'll be happy to answer your questions, Bill, to the best of my ability.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kaveh Portemore. First of all, let me congratulate you all to have traveled here, and definitely you are good CIOs for risk management and contingency planning. That's one of our everyday lives, so well done, well done. I know I had to really tackle the trains and all the undergrounds and everything, so it's been a challenge, so I can understand our colleagues being delayed. So as I said, I'm Kaveh Portemore. I'm the CIO of a company called Seadrill. It's one of the leading offshore drilling oil and gas companies, operating globally, working with most of the major oil and gas operators. I joined about 18 months ago. The company is going through what all the other oil and gas companies are going through, the challenges of the lower oil price, but also on the other side, the opportunities of such lower oil price causes basically for that upstream part of the oil and gas industry to become more efficient, more effective, more productive. And I think it's never been a greater time to be in this particular industry, and certainly the use of IT is a great opportunity now in this particular sector. So I look forward to having the debate, and very pleased to be part of this forum. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kaveh and Jean-François. By the way, as we're a small select group at this time in the morning, I very much welcome your comments, your questions as we talk. So is CIO, does it stand for career is over? The government here has been collapsing departmental CIO roles and in favor of CTOs and CDOs, Chief Digital Officers. Incidentally, there's another CDO in the frame, which is the Chief Data Officer, so sometimes you get a bit confused. And the Chief Digital Officer for the government said A shift in technology provision, Bracken said, has left room for CDOs across government to make real progress without CIOs. What's your feeling on that?
Thank you. My view is that CDOs is what CIOs should be, or should have been. Basically a bridge between two trends. One side there's very generic IT and a lot of things that are available and that do not need as much supervision or not the same kind of involvement in budget as before. And on the other side of this there is business. So having the luxury or the opportunity to be on somehow the both sides, one foot in each, so it's a little bit stretching, but it can be called CIO. I guess the key point is how do you make IT work for business versus anything else, just IT working for itself as it used to be, at least in the cliches.
What's your view, Kevin?
You know, I think there's so many of these acronyms that are coming up, popping up, role of CDO, CMO, you know, all these things. I think the reality is that IT is impacting every role in the organization. And every role in the organization, whether it's the marketing, whether it's the operations, whether it's the supply chain, whether it's the finance, they all have a very, very active interest in IT and how it impacts them and their roles. So as such, I think I look at the role of the CIO as one of an orchestrator in the organization. Orchestrator that recognizes that you have you know, great players in your orchestra that you need to tap into. You know, if the head of marketing wants to drive the digital agenda, fantastic. That's part of your, you know, part of your orchestration. If your head of your supply chain is looking at basically the opportunities for, you know, radically managing the supply chain in a different way, that's fantastic. That's the job of, to me, I think I go beyond basically the acronyms that are coming up in the organization and really elevating the role of the CIO as that orchestrator in that. And maybe just if I just add one more point, I think I have been, I guess, as a CIO, before that I was with BP, before that I was with BOC as CIO also. And I guess the role that I have changed, and in this organization that I'm in, where my infrastructure is 100% into the cloud, whereas in my previous organizations, you know, the infrastructure was a lot more in-house and well managed basically by my team and so on, by the organization. The big difference that I'm kind of saying is that my role is not changed from that kind of IT management part of it to one of, which is the I aspect of the CIO, to I would call the other I's, which are, you know, driving the integration in the organization, about the, you know, integrating the hybrid cloud infrastructures, for example. The I in the integrity of the system, from security, from compliance. The I in intelligence, you know, there's so much the data that you have now. It's about how you can get the insight from those intelligence. So, and obviously the I in innovation, it's such an exciting time. That, you know, for those of you who have been in the IT industry for a long time, you know that probably the last 20, 25 years we've been trying to get all this promise of technology working. Now I think the technology works, mostly out of the box. Now it's actually now about influencing the business outcome, which is kind of the other eye of the CIO. So that's...
Jean-François, do you want to...
Yeah, very much concur to this. I think what makes IT necessary across the board and so useful across the board nowadays is data. There is so much data, and to be honest, working in something which is very close to the real estate industry, it is really low tech. It's really archaic. And there is not a lot of data. because it's so fragmented. But it is very complex sets of data which need a lot of reworking and stuff. So, and it's worldwide, and it goes through so many various jurisdictions, and the rules are changing, definitions are changing. There's no such thing as a square meter that you could apply across even two countries that share one border, not to mention different units like square feet, all that kind of things. But and this makes IT so powerful, so it makes the need of IT so necessary in everything. I think most of the front office functions and also most of the back office functions, I run the back and middle ones, so I can really testify here, are really doing things they've been doing them like always, and not realizing how much things could be changed in that regard. The only part which I'm not experiencing in that role in terms of being really a bridge with the business is what will that change for our clients. I think being in the B2B industry, being with institutional clients, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, that kind of thing, quite traditional bunch, and not being in a retail industry, it's not like having to, it doesn't make sense to put in place a nice a nice portal where you can do everything mobile and with using your iPhone and stuff. It's not a need for those clients, so it's a little bit less glamorous than in other industries. At the same time, these very people who are quite, let's say, conservative are also very interested in data. So what I see, and this is, I think this is impacting the CIO role. CIOs used to be, I mean, the way I saw them and the way I've been operating at a point, I'm the king on this kingdom, and these are the borders, and nothing has to cross, nothing is even allowed to cross that border. Today, my firm is completely connected to providers, clients, across the world in many continents, and this is a completely open thing. So a lot of data, a lot of IT again, and lots of matching these data and IT and processes with what the business needs.
Interesting, because I think you both mentioned the data issue, and that I think plays to the eye of information. And one of the big bugbears I think we've got in English is this word IT, and people tend to focus on the T and not the I. I was very amused I was talking to a newly appointed chief digital officer of a major organization, and he said, you know, it's really interesting, I've come into this role, but I've suddenly found that actually the problem is not the digital, it's the data. So now I've become the chief data officer as well, and I started thinking, isn't that what the CIO does? So what is digital? I mean, what's this thing digital? What does it really mean? What's it all about? Is it big data? Is it the technology? Is it the flood? Is it the 6 billion mobiles out there?
I think digital, again, another terminology that we've created, will mean different things to different organizations.
Yeah,
If you like, what it means for an organization like us, it's about where you have rigs basically all over the world, working in quite challenging, physically challenging environments offshore, to tough regulations that exist environmentally, legally, as well as obviously the challenges of the economy, of the oil prices. So all of these challenges, I think the things that the business drivers we work to are safety, reliability of our rigs, efficiency, and making sure that these rigs that we have allow our customers to be able to operate and drill more effectively and more efficiently. So as such, for us, the digital platform that we are building needs to basically allow this whole operation work, from how our applications support our end-to-end processes, to how our satellite communications allow our rigs to communicate to onshore offices, or how our communication and collaboration allows our connectivity to all of our people, to how we use robotics, for example, to how we use augmented reality, to how we use the big data for equipment reliability, maintenance. What we are trying to kind of create a digital platform that encompasses all of these technologies, not actually having point solutions. So that's what we create. So mobility is part of that digital platform we are, working to. You don't create mobility on its own stream. You do it as part of a bigger platform that you're creating. And I think I use the example of how people like, companies like eBay, Amazon, Google, they've created a platform effectively for the economy to leverage that. And I look at it as a smaller scale for ourselves, that my job is to create that digital platform that allows my business to kind of address these challenges and these business drivers.
Jean-Francois, what do you think? What's your view on digital?
Yeah.
There's a question there, sorry. Oh, there's the microphone there, by the way.
Okay. You did say it was interactive.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've talked quite a lot about D's and I's. I haven't heard you talk much about the C, and I think listening to you, I've recognized the pattern, and I do it myself as quite a deep geek, but you're not talking about leadership. You are talking about collaboration, you're talking about improving the business, improving products, innovation, but listening kind of one step removed from that, you haven't talked very much about how we lead the board, how we drive change, how we inspire our own people, and help them really understand the change in life that digital data, information, whatever we want to call it, the technology doesn't really matter, but I think the leadership matters a lot. And I think the worrying about the word and what the I stands for, and exactly what the FT said, to be honest, comes out in the way you guys are talking. I completely agree with everything you've said, but it sounds a little bit techie and not enough visionary board leadership level talk. And I think that's where we have to get to. So, with apologies.
No, that's a great comment. And the chief, and how you get onto the board and what the particular qualities are. I always admit that I put that at the top. It is a leadership role. But what leadership of what?
So I have my take on this one.
That's a great comment. Yeah.
I think that's a very fair point. Now we can remove these things about CDO, CIOs, digital and stuff. Any new word we can forget about for a while. I think the role of achieve something is about leadership, and the difference between a successful CIO, meaning successful for the organization, is between someone who's basically delivering upon requests in a very good way, very effective way, and someone that would be willing to move the lines and introduce changes and leading that change. I think what should exist and probably exists quite widely across IT departments, to call them for lack of a better word, is knowledge about technology, fair enough, a little bit of too much fascination about technology, so maybe we should take a step back. Project management, which is quite sometimes lacking on the business side, I would think, but just personal experience. Change management, a view on the firm as a process or a set of processes, which is so useful in the digital world because it's about digits, it's about numbers and information circulating. So I think CIOs should always have been leaders and should be in a position where they are allowed to make not nice comments and also suggest things that are blurring the lines or changing the lines. I'm lucky enough to be on the XCOM of my company, and I can sort of say that it takes a lot to move business out of their comfort zone, but when it works, it could be through technology, but most of the time I've been able to move business out of their comfort zone with very, very little technology. And as a matter of fact, technology is not important. It works. It is generic to a large extent, even in our business, which is so low tech.
The big challenge is always people.
Indeed, because we are people.
Just taking up your point, quite often when I'm talking to fellow chief officers or board members, there are a couple of tricks. Oh, no, not tricks really. One is, what does the CFO do? What's the role of the CFO? And I'd put it to you, the role of the CFO is around the management and governance of the critical finance asset, yeah? And I explained it this way, that actually the role of the CIO, and I think you've just said it there, is not so much about the technology, but it's really about what is the fundamental asset which we are responsible for as CIOs, and the governance and the management of that particular asset. And the answer, I think, is in the word. It's information. It's information and data. Because so often we get bogged down in those technology weeds, and I don't think that, as you just said, I don't think that is the issue. It's actually how do we manage how are we responsible for the data and the information in the organizations. I mean, I do interim roles, so I go from CIO role to CIO role. And the one thing that's consistent is the lack of quality of data. There are very few companies and organizations in which you have good data quality and it's well governed. And they even think about the governance, actually. Sorry, Jabe. Yep.
No, I think you're right. But I think your question and our observation is really right. I think it's I use the word the orchestrator in the organization. And the music that the orchestrator plays is the business outcomes that organization is looking. Whereas maybe in the past we were trying, as an IT function, trying to get the technology working basically, or enabling or delivering a capability, that's no longer good enough. It's about right now influencing the business outcomes. Whether it's the business outcomes that really matters for the organization. And I don't like to use the word transformation. A lot of people just use, we are on a transformation. You talk to everybody, we're doing a transformation. Well, over the last 30 years of my life, it's always been transformation, So I'd rather basically saying that actually business is the BAU, business as usual for a business is change. And it's continuous change, and how you can continuously change, and sometimes you're making incremental changes, sometimes you're making radical changes. I think that being able to, the beauty of where we are now is that there's so much good technology available now that works out of a box, and you're right, I think and particularly for those of us that are also on the cloud, it's less about the managing of the boxes and wires and the technology aspect, but also around now is about basically how can you start tapping to the talent that you have in the organization. We have, sometimes I hear basically people saying, oh, my users are difficult and my users are this and this and that. I actually say that every person in my organization that is a user of IT systems is actually a source of innovation for me, because they know their business well, they know the opportunities. So my job is to be able to tap into those ideas, those innovation thoughts that they have, to be able to drive the change for this business, and at the end of the day is delivering those business outcomes to create the differentiation in these markets that we are. So it is very good, and I think the other aspects of it is if you say what is my biggest challenge, is actually the talent that we need. And you know, when we talk about the role of the CIO, actually, and we had this discussion before the panel, it's not about the role of the CIO, it's actually the role of the IT function. And the people that are within those IT function are now need to kind of think differently, as you kind of rightly says. And it's all about technology impacting business outcome. And there is a shortage of talent and capability in the marketplace to be able to do that now. There's plenty of people that understand the technology, boxes and wires, but actually relating it to business impact and driving to change to business impact, that's the tough part, and that's my biggest challenge.
Thank you. Maybe to add to what you just said, the good thing about digital CDOs, CMOs, and the IT budget moving from one part of the organization to the other, or not, is that I think it's drawn, at least from what I've seen, it's drawn a lot of attention from the board to the value that these tools could have, or could add, or could contribute to adding to the business, and also given an opportunity to be a little bit bolder and explore some fields which are new in an industry. As an example, I'd like to mention blockchain. Blockchain is something that, you know, it's some sort of a distributed ledger, which is could be very powerful to record the transactions. As a matter of fact, we're an asset manager. Everything we do is about transactions, starting from sending an email to someone to buying an asset, or interacting with so many other participants or stakeholders in the finance industry, regulators, depository banks and stuff. Everything is transaction. Obviously, cash is transaction, and I think this year is the year where real estate is going to wake up to blockchain. And the good thing is that it is going far beyond what our firms as businesses are considering in their strategy, which is, you know, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, something. This is one of these disruptions where it is so obvious that you need technical competence, you need strategic vision, you need a network of firms and providers that will support you using it. And you need to influence, you need lobbying, you need stuff. So this is a very, very strategic topic where it's such an obvious role for a CIO that would really want to take the leadership.
So there are a lot of soft skills really that are
Indeed.
needed in the role. And as you mentioned cloud there, Yavi, is that changing the way we manage and the sort of people that we need in the IT department?
Yes, absolutely. I think the changing landscape that we have. I mean, I just use my own environment. That when we went into cloud, 100%, and my environment, 80% is in private virtual cloud, 20% is in public cloud. So for me, I had then to determine what is the IT organization that I need to create that above this. And for me, it was about, you know, having the capability that manages that IT value chain from a kind of deep capability around tapping into our suppliers and partners, our strategic partners, basically, how we work with them in a very, very, because if I can kind of crack that code, then I have access to huge capacity to be able to, and special capabilities that I can. So that part of it was very important. The other part of it that I had to kind of make sure I have the capability is how I align with my businesses, how I'm kind of deeply basically aligned with them to understand and drive innovation into that organization. And in between that, having the right strategy, architecture capability, program management, having the right information security capabilities. All of these capabilities is about managing the value chain, and not actually about the kind of the detailed kind of day-to-day running, which is kind of outsourced. But again, the one thing that I've kind of learned is when you're going into the cloud, it's still, you need to still be, you're not dealing with kind of black boxes out there. You are, at the end of the day, dealing with people who are managing your environments. I have more staff right now in my cloud providers, in my private virtual cloud providers, than I have in my own staff. As such, I kind of make a point to understand and who they are, how I can motivate them, how I can energize them. So to me, it's not a black box. I have to know the hundreds of people that kind of serve my operation in the cloud to reach out with them. So one of the things I have is I have a staff town hall meetings, and I invite all my dedicated cloud providers to those town halls, monthly town hall meetings, and they say, being able to see and hear the strategy, the challenges, the progress, firsthand. I think that really allows them to feel part of my organization. And even though some of these cloud providers are big organizations, they value that very much. But I don't know if Jean.
In agreement. Well, I think we're getting to the end here. I'd like to ask the floor a question. You don't have to answer. Do you think that digital is purely about digital engagement, that it's the engagement with the customer or the citizen or the client? Is that what digital is all about?
Isn't that rather like asking what's the telephone for? 150 years ago or whenever it was invented. It's just stuff that we do. The important thing is a lot of what you've been talking about, the change, program management. Maybe we should be chief process officers. I think the expertise on process change and projects is biggest in IT. But I think asking the question, what's digital about, is like asking, why do we have electricity? There's so much that it's about that the question becomes almost meaningless.
So it's all encompassing.
I think it's so varied in how you might interpret it that it's not helpful to try and think about it. I think we need to be more focused than that. So it's a good question to ask this floor, but I don't think it would help with a strategic discussion about what you're doing. I think you have to start with something a bit more well-defined that's not amorphous and meaning something different to everybody. That's why we're discussing what a CIO does, isn't it? Because none of us really knows. We know what we do, and we know what the business needs, but what the word means sort of isn't important. What's important is what we do.
But I think the debate at the moment out there is all about digital. That's part of the problem. And there's a lot of different understandings about that word.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. I'm not sure the debate is all about digital. Digital is clearly one of the things that every CIO, IT director is thinking about, but there's a whole multitude of things that every CIO has to focus on. It's digital, it's cost effectiveness, it's cost reduction, it's cloud, it's security, it's agility, it's speed. I mean, I think the role of a CIO is multifaceted, and digital is just one part of what a CIO has to cope with. It's about, as you said, about leadership, people management, and I think a true CIO actually is able to cover all of those different aspects.
Okay, Jason, I think we'll... One more question then.
Good morning, sorry. I think the key thing for businesses is actually to do things, whatever business you're in, is to do it in the most efficient way possible. Now, what we do is to enable that, whether it's digital or whatever. It's just a new buzzword at the moment, everything's digital, right? But the reality is the business wants to be the most efficient, the most cost effective in doing whatever they do, right? Making the most money or being productive in what they do, right? We shouldn't get hung up on all these new buzzwords and so forth, really, because digital is this new craze at the moment. But reality is these fads will come and go, but the key thing is we've got to help businesses do what they do in the best and most efficient way possible.
Absolutely.
Can I just make one last
Javed?
comment? Yes. Sorry. No, I think again this is quite an interesting thing. One thing that has changed basically probably over the last 10 years, which makes whether you call it digital, whether you call it IT, whatever word you use, the rate of disruption of every industry is phenomenally grown in terms of this. So business models are changing more rapidly than ever over the last 5-10 years probably. So that's the only thing. If there's one takeaway I think we need to take, and whatever you call it, digital or IT, whatever basically you call it, is we're all going to get changed. Our industries are going to get challenged. Our industries are going to get radically changed. We just got to think about what does that mean. Do we want to be a follower? Do we want to take the lead? And what's that? I think that's just the thought.
Okay, Jean-François?
Yeah, one very last thing. As far as the finance industry is concerned, it's always been a virtual business. So it's only normal to align that with digital. Now, in my part of this industry, nobody realizes that this is a virtual business, so there's a catching up to perform, and therefore probably this buzzword is being used and makes sense for that next step. Now, I like very much the comment that was made about the phone, and I was thinking about a question that was asked, I think, to the CEO of a big camera maker, can't remember the name, when digital cameras were introduced, and he said, well, what is a digital camera? I think it was an investors meeting. He said the digital camera is a camera without the roll for, sorry, I'm missing the word in English, but
Film. Yeah.
film, thank you. And I was looking back, that was so short-sighted, so silly, because now we've got that on our phones, and we publish movies of the last bombing that took place in one place, and the newspapers are using this, and we're sending pictures to our children, and this is being used to do diagnosis after flooding on your house, and I mean, nobody probably anticipated this at that time, but I think digital, beyond everything what you said and the room said, which is so true, is something by which our world is becoming a little bit more virtual. Daunting, frightening, opportunity, whatever, but I think there's a big thing here.
Okay, well, thanks very much to Yave and Jean-François. I'd like you all to join me in thanking them for an interesting discussion. Thank you very much.